"Congratulations on your sale, Ms. Hartley." The realtor's voicemail played through my phone as I stood in the coffee shop line. "The buyers are thrilled with the downtown condo. Closing is scheduled for next Friday. Call me if you have any questions about the paperwork." I stared at my phone, confused. I hadn't sold anything. The condo the realtor mentioned was the $2 million property my grandmother left me when she passed away 6 months ago. The same condo I'd been carefully maintaining while I decided whether to keep it or sell it myself. My hands stayed steady as I ordered my latte, but my mind was racing. Someone had sold my property without my permission, and based on the realtor's message, they'd used my last name to do it. I walked calmly to a corner table and pulled out my laptop. Within minutes, I found the listing. My grandmother's beautiful downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the harbor. Listed 3 weeks ago, already marked as pending sale. The listing agent's name made everything clear. Bethany Cortez, my sister's longtime friend. "My name is Debbie Hartley. I'm 34 years old, and until that voicemail, I thought I understood my family. My sister Kayla is 29, charming, and has always been my parents' favorite. She's the one who could do no wrong, while I was the boring accountant who focused too much on work." Grandma Ruth had been different. She saw through Kayla's act and appreciated my steady, responsible nature. When she passed away last year, she left her entire estate to me. The $2 million condo, her savings, her jewelry collection, everything. Kayla had been furious. She'd expected to inherit at least half, maybe more. After all, she'd visited Grandma every week, brought her flowers, posted photos of their time together on social media. What she didn't know was that Grandma had told me about every visit where Kayla asked for money or hinted about the will. I'd kept quiet about the inheritance details, only telling my family that Grandma had left me the condo. I didn't mention the rest. Something told me to be careful. Now I understood why. I called the realtor back immediately, keeping my voice pleasant and curious. "Hi, this is Debbie Hartley. I just got your message about the condo sale. Can you tell me more about the closing timeline?" "Of course, Ms. Hartley," Bethany replied cheerfully. "Everything's moving smoothly. The buyers are pre-approved, and we're set to close next Friday at 2 p.m. You'll need to bring your ID and sign the final documents at the title company." "Actually," I said carefully, "I'm a bit confused. I don't remember signing a listing agreement with you." There was a brief pause. "Your sister Kayla brought in the paperwork. She said you'd authorized her to handle the sale while you were dealing with work commitments. She had a power of attorney document." My sister had forged legal documents. I kept my voice calm. "I see. Can you send me copies of everything? I want to review the documents before closing." "Absolutely. I'll email them right now." I thanked her and hung up, my mind already working through the implications. The documents arrived in my inbox within minutes. I opened them with my coffee growing cold beside me, my accounting background making it easy to spot the problems. The power of attorney was a clear forgery. My signature looked nothing like the one on the document. Kayla had tried, but she'd never been good at details. The notary stamp was from a county I'd never visited. The date was from a month ago, when I had been at a 3-day conference with dozens of witnesses. But what caught my attention most was the purchase agreement. The condo was selling for $1.8 million, $200,000 less than its appraised value, and according to the documents, the money would be wired to an account ending in numbers I recognized. Kayla's account, the one she'd opened last year and carelessly mentioned during a family dinner. I sat back thinking, I could report this immediately, stop the sale, have Kayla arrested for fraud and forgery, but something held me back. Kayla had always been impulsive, dramatic. If I confronted her now, she'd cry and claim it was a misunderstanding. My parents would defend her like they always did. I needed to be smarter than that. I called my attorney, Maxwell Pierce, a sharp lawyer who'd helped me set up my consulting business 2 years ago. I'd known Maxwell since college, and I trusted him completely. "Debbie," he answered on the second ring, "what can I do for you?" I need your help with something unusual, I said, explaining the situation quickly and clearly. Maxwell was silent for a moment after I finished. That's fraud, forgery, and probably a few other felonies. We should report this immediately. I want to, I agreed. But I need your advice first. If we report it now, Kayla will claim she made a mistake or that I gave her verbal permission. My parents will support her story. It'll be messy. What are you thinking? Maxwell asked, his tone shifting to the careful strategy mode I'd seen in negotiations. I'm thinking we let it play out a little longer, I said. Document everything. Let her dig herself deeper. Then we stop it in a way that leaves no room for excuses or family sympathy. Maxwell was quiet again. That's risky. I know, but it's thorough. And you know me, Maxwell, I'm always thorough. He laughed. That's true. All right, let's talk strategy. Over the next 3 days, I maintained my normal routine while Maxwell worked behind the scenes. I went to work at my consulting firm, met with clients, had dinner with friends. I didn't contact Kayla or my parents. But I was documenting everything. Maxwell obtained official records proving I was at the conference when the power of attorney was supposedly signed. We got sworn statements from the hotel, my coworkers, even the conference organizers. Maxwell also contacted a handwriting expert who examined the forged signature and prepared a detailed report. The expert was prepared to testify in court if needed. Meanwhile, I accessed my grandmother's estate files. Ruth had been meticulous about her records, and I'd kept everything organized. The will was clear and legally sound. There was no ambiguity about who inherited the condo. I also discovered something interesting in Grandma Ruth's personal papers. She'd kept a journal in her final years, documenting her thoughts about family. The entries about Kayla were revealing, describing visits where my sister had asked for money, made comments about deserving an inheritance, even suggested that Grandma should sell the condo and give Kayla half the proceeds while she was still alive. Grandma had refused every time, and she documented it all. On Thursday, 5 days after the voicemail, Kayla finally called me. Her voice was bright and friendly, the way it always was when she wanted something or was hiding something. Debbie, how are you? I feel like we haven't talked in forever. I'm good, I replied, keeping my tone normal. Work's been busy, how about you? Oh, the usual. Hey, I was thinking about Grandma's condo. Have you decided what you're going to do with it? Keep it or sell? I paused deliberately, as if considering my answer. I'm still thinking about it. Why do you ask? No reason, Kayla said quickly. I just know it's been sitting empty for months. Seems like a waste, The market's really good right now. If you were thinking of selling, now would be the time. That's true, I agreed. But I'm not in a rush. The condo's paid off, so there's no pressure. I could almost hear Kayla's frustration through the phone. Right, but the longer you wait, the more you have to pay in property taxes and maintenance fees. It's expensive to keep a place like that. I can afford it, I said simply. There was an awkward silence. Well, if you change your mind, let me know. I have a friend who's a realtor. She could probably get you a great price. I'll keep that in mind, I replied. Thanks, Kayla. After we hung up, I smiled. She had no idea I knew everything. The next morning, Friday, was closing day according to the forged documents. I dressed carefully in a professional navy suit, pulled my hair into a neat bun, and drove to the title company where the closing was scheduled. Maxwell met me in the parking lot, carrying a briefcase full of documents. Ready? He asked. Absolutely. We walked in together. The receptionist directed us to a conference room where Kayla was already waiting with Bethany, the realtor. The buyers, a young couple, sat nervously on one side of the table. Kayla's face went pale when she saw me walk in with Maxwell. She recovered quickly, forcing a smile. Debbie, what are you doing here? I'm here for my closing, I said calmly, taking a seat across from her. This is my attorney, Maxwell Pierce. Bethany looked confused. I thought Kayla was handling everything with the power of attorney. That's an interesting assumption, Maxwell said, opening his briefcase. since no valid power of attorney exists. The room went silent. Kayla's smile disappeared. What are you talking about? I have the paperwork right here. You have a forged document, Maxwell corrected, which we can prove through handwriting analysis, notary verification, and the sworn testimony of multiple witnesses who can confirm Debbie was out of state when this power of attorney was supposedly executed. The title company officer, an older woman named Patricia, held up her hand. Let's slow down. Are you saying there's a problem with the documentation? Yes, I said clearly. My sister forged my signature and created false legal documents to sell property that belongs solely to me. I never authorized this sale. Kayla stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. That's insane. Debbie, why are you doing this? We talked about selling the condo. You agreed. We never talked about selling anything, I replied, my voice steady. I have phone records that prove we've barely spoken in the last 6 months. Maxwell pulled out a folder. We have evidence that Ms. Kayla Hartley created fraudulent documents, forged her sister's signature, and attempted to sell property valued at $2 million without authorization. We also have evidence that she intended to redirect the sale proceeds to her personal account. Bethany's face flushed red. Kayla, you told me your sister authorized this. You said she was too busy with work to handle it herself. She did authorize it, Kayla insisted, but her voice cracked. She just doesn't remember. Debbie, you've been so stressed with work. Maybe you forgot our conversation. I pulled out my phone, opened my recording app, and placed it on the table. Actually, I recorded our conversation from yesterday, the one where you never mentioned the sale was happening today. I pressed play. Kayla's voice filled the room, asking vaguely about the condo, suggesting I sell it someday, but never mentioning that a closing was scheduled for the next morning. The young couple stood up, looking distressed. We had no idea, the husband said quickly. We thought this was a legitimate sale. We don't want any part of fraud. You're not involved, Maxwell assured them. This is between the sisters. The sale simply cannot proceed because the seller doesn't have legal authority to sell. Patricia nodded firmly. I'm canceling this closing immediately, and I'll be filing a report with the State Real Estate Commission about these forged documents. Bethany turned to Kayla, her professional composure cracking. You told me everything was legitimate. Do you have any idea what this does to my reputation, my career? Kayla's eyes filled with tears, her usual tactic. It was a mistake. I thought Debbie wanted me to handle it. I was just trying to help. By forging legal documents, Maxwell asked coolly, and arranging for the proceeds to go to your account instead of your sister's. Kayla's face went white. How did you know about that? Because I'm thorough, I said quietly. The same way Grandma Ruth was thorough when she documented every time you asked her for money or tried to manipulate her into changing her will. The room fell silent. Kayla stared at me, tears streaming down her face now, but I saw something else in her eyes too, anger. Grandma loved me, she said quietly. She wouldn't have cut me out completely. She didn't cut you out, I replied. She left you her jewelry collection and $10,000. It's all in the will, which you apparently never read carefully. After the failed closing, I returned home while Maxwell handled the legal aftermath. He filed a formal complaint with the police, provided all our evidence, and began the process of pursuing charges against Kayla for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. I sat in my apartment, drinking tea and thinking about Grandma Ruth. She would have handled this situation with quiet dignity, just as she'd handled Kayla's manipulation attempts for years. She never made scenes or dramatic confrontations. She simply documented everything and made her wishes clear through proper legal channels. I'd learned from her example. My phone rang. It was my mother, Audrey. Her voice was shrill with panic. Debbie, what have you done? Kayla just called me crying, saying you're trying to have her arrested. I'm not trying to have her arrested, Mom, I said calmly. She committed fraud by forging my signature and attempting to sell my property. The legal system is handling it. She made a mistake. You know how Kayla is, she gets confused sometimes. But to call the police, your own sister. I took a deep breath. Mom, Kayla forged legal documents, created a fake power of attorney, and tried to steal $2 million from me. That's not confusion. That's criminal fraud. Oh, don't be so dramatic, my mother snapped. Everything in this family has to be so complicated with you. Can't you just work this out privately? Think about how this looks. I am thinking about how it looks, I replied. It looks like I'm protecting my legal rights and the inheritance Grandma Ruth specifically wanted me to have. My father called an hour later. Unlike my mother, he was quieter, more measured. Debbie, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. I explained the situation carefully, leaving out nothing. The forged power of attorney, the scheduled closing, the attempt to redirect funds to Kayla's account. When I finished, there was a long silence. I see, he finally said, and you have evidence of all this. Complete documentation, I confirmed. Handwriting analysis, sworn statements, phone records, everything. Another pause. Your mother wants me to convince you to drop the charges. And what do you want, Dad? He sighed heavily. I want to know why my daughters can't work things out without lawyers and police reports. But I also know your grandmother trusted you with her estate for a reason. Ruth was the smartest person I ever knew. If she chose you, she had good reasons. It was the closest thing to support I'd gotten from my father in years. Thank you for saying that. I'm not choosing sides, he said quickly. But I'm not asking you to drop the charges either. If Kayla did what you say, she needs to face consequences. Your mother won't like it, but that's between her and me. After he hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Vindication, sadness, and a deep exhaustion from years of being the responsible one while Kayla got away with everything. Over the next week, the legal process moved forward. The police investigated, reviewed our evidence, and formally charged Kayla with forgery and attempted fraud. Maxwell filed a restraining order preventing her from accessing any of my property or accounts. The Real Estate Commission launched an investigation into Bethany, who claimed she'd been deceived by Kayla. The investigation would determine if Bethany had been negligent in verifying the power of attorney documents. I also discovered something else during this time. While reviewing my grandmother's estate more carefully, I found a safe deposit box I hadn't known about. Inside were additional documents, letters from Kayla asking Grandma Ruth for money over the years, emails where Kayla had complained about the will before Grandma died, even a recording Grandma had made of a conversation where Kayla had suggested Grandma was too old to manage her own finances. Grandma Ruth had been documenting Kayla's behavior for years, probably knowing there might be a challenge to the will someday. I made copies of everything and gave them to Maxwell. This shows premeditation, he said after reviewing the materials. Kayla's been planning something like this for a while. I think she assumed I wouldn't fight back, I said. She's used to getting her way, especially with Mom and Dad supporting her. Well, she severely underestimated you, Maxwell observed. That was her crucial mistake. 2 weeks after the failed closing, I received a call from an unexpected source, the young couple who'd tried to buy the condo. The husband, whose name was Aaron, asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about what they wanted. Aaron and his wife Stephanie arrived at the coffee shop looking nervous but determined. We wanted to apologize, Stephanie said immediately. We had no idea there was anything wrong with the sale. Bethany assured us everything was legitimate. I know, I replied. You're not responsible for my sister's fraud. We also wanted to ask, Aaron continued, if you're planning to sell the condo at some point. We fell in love with that property. The location, the view, everything. We understand if you want nothing to do with us after all this, but we wanted to at least ask. I studied them for a moment. They seemed genuine, young professionals starting their life together. The condo is worth $2 million based on the recent appraisal, I said. My sister was trying to sell it for $1.8 million and pocket the difference. We know, Stephanie said, and we'd be willing to pay fair market value. We've already been approved for the loan. I thought about Grandma Ruth's condo sitting empty versus a young couple who genuinely wanted to make it their home. "Let me think about it," I said. "If I decide to sell, I'll have my attorney contact you with legitimate paperwork." They left looking hopeful, and I found myself actually considering it. That evening, I drove to the condo for the first time since discovering Kayla's fraud. I stood in the empty living room, looking out at the harbor view Grandma Ruth had loved so much. The space held so many memories. Childhood visits where Grandma taught me to bake, teenage years when I'd come here to escape family drama, adult years when we'd sit on the balcony and talk about life, business, and dealing with difficult people. "You prepared me for this, didn't you?" I said aloud to the empty room. "All those talks about protecting myself, keeping good records, not letting people take advantage of kindness." I could almost hear Grandma Ruth's voice. "People will test you, Debbie, especially family. You have to decide what kind of person you're going to be. The kind who lets people walk over her, or the kind who stands up calmly and firmly for what's right." I'd chosen to stand up, and now I needed to decide what came next. Keeping the condo meant maintaining an empty property, paying taxes and fees, holding on to memories. Selling it meant letting go, but also moving forward and perhaps helping a young couple start their life together. I pulled out my phone and called Maxwell. "I want to sell the condo to Aaron and Stephanie. Can you draw up proper paperwork?" "Absolutely," he replied. "At full market value." "At full market value," I confirmed. "And Maxwell, I want the sale finalized before Kayla's trial. I want her to know she accomplished nothing except criminal charges." The legitimate sale process moved smoothly. Maxwell prepared proper documentation, verified identities, ensured all paperwork was legal and correct. The title company assigned a different officer to handle the closing, given the previous issues. Aaron and Stephanie were thrilled. They paid the full appraised value of $2 million, and the closing was scheduled for 3 weeks after Kayla's failed attempt. During this time, Kayla tried to contact me multiple times. I blocked her calls and referred everything to Maxwell. My mother called daily, begging me to drop the charges and stop tearing the family apart. "I didn't tear anything apart," I told her during one call. "Kayla did that when she chose to commit fraud instead of accepting Grandma's will." "She's your sister," my mother cried. "Family is supposed to forgive." "Family is also supposed to respect boundaries and not steal from each other," I replied calmly. "But Kayla never learned that lesson because you always protected her from consequences." My mother hung up on me. We didn't speak again for weeks. My father, surprisingly, called to tell me he'd hired his own attorney to review everything. "Your mother won't like this," he said, "but I need to understand what really happened. If Kayla did what you say, she needs help I can't give her." "She needs to face what she did," I agreed. "I know," he said quietly. "I think I've known for a long time that we failed both of you. You by not supporting you enough, Kayla by supporting her too much." It was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with my father. The legitimate closing happened on a sunny Thursday morning. This time there was no drama, no forged documents, no sister trying to steal my inheritance. Just proper paperwork, legitimate signatures, and a fair transaction. Aaron and Stephanie were so happy they actually teared up when signing the final documents. "We're going to take such good care of this place," Stephanie promised. "I know you will," I replied, meaning it. When the wire transfer completed, putting $2 million into my account, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness at letting go of Grandma's place, and satisfaction at doing everything correctly and legally. Maxwell walked me to my car after the closing. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I honored Grandma Ruth's wishes while protecting myself," I said. "She would have approved." "She would have been proud," Maxwell corrected. "You handled this with incredible grace and strategic thinking." That afternoon, I transferred money to several accounts. Part went to investments, part to savings, and a significant portion went into a trust fund I'd established. The trust was designed to support women who were starting their own businesses, something Grandma Ruth had always encouraged. The trust was named after her, the Ruth Hartley Foundation for Women Entrepreneurs. It was the perfect way to honor her legacy. Kayla's trial was scheduled for 2 months after the legitimate closing. The prosecutor had a strong case: forged documents, handwriting analysis, my testimony, the failed closing, and the evidence of intent to redirect funds to Kayla's account. Maxwell prepared me thoroughly for my testimony. "Just tell the truth calmly and clearly," he advised. "Don't let emotion take over, even if Kayla or your mother tries to provoke you." The trial lasted 3 days. I testified on the second day, explaining how I discovered the fraud, what steps I took, and how I'd worked with my attorney to document everything. Kayla's defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, claiming I'd always been jealous of my younger sister and was using this situation to punish her for being the favorite child. But Maxwell had prepared me for this angle. "I wasn't jealous," I testified calmly. "I was protecting my legal rights and honoring my grandmother's explicit wishes as stated in her will. My sister chose to commit fraud instead of accepting that inheritance decision." The prosecutor presented the forged power of attorney, the handwriting analysis, and the evidence showing Kayla had researched how to sell property without the owner's knowledge weeks before actually attempting it. She'd made Google searches, visited legal advice forums, and even consulted with another realtor before approaching Bethany. It showed clear premeditation and planning. On the third day, Kayla took the stand in her own defense. She cried, claimed she'd been confused about Grandma's wishes, and insisted she'd only been trying to help me by handling the sale since I was so busy with work. But under cross-examination, her story fell apart. The prosecutor showed her the bank records proving she'd planned to keep the money. He presented the Google searches about selling property without authorization. He showed the timeline of her actions, from researching fraud to executing it. "Ms. Hartley," the prosecutor asked, "if you were truly trying to help your sister, why did you arrange for the sale proceeds to go to your account instead of hers?" Kayla had no good answer. She claimed it was a temporary holding account until she could give me the money, but she couldn't explain why that was necessary or why she'd never mentioned this plan to me. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They found Kayla guilty on all counts: forgery, fraud, and attempted theft. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. I sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, feeling no triumph or joy. Just a quiet satisfaction that justice had been served and Grandma Ruth's wishes had been protected. My mother sobbed loudly. My father sat beside her, his face unreadable. When the judge dismissed everyone, my mother turned to glare at me. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "Your sister's going to prison because of you." "No, Mom," I replied quietly. "She's going to prison because of her choices." The sentencing hearing 2 weeks later was brief. Kayla's attorney argued for probation, community service, anything to avoid prison time. He emphasized that Kayla had no prior criminal record and came from a good family. The prosecutor argued that the sophisticated nature of the fraud, the premeditation, and the significant dollar amount warranted serious consequences. He also noted that Kayla had shown no genuine remorse, only self-pity at being caught. The judge agreed with the prosecutor. She sentenced Kayla to 3 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months if she maintained good behavior and completed financial ethics courses. "Ms. Hartley," the judge said, addressing Kayla directly, "you attempted to steal $2 million from your sister through fraud and forgery. You violated trust, broke the law, and showed contempt for the legal system. Your actions warrant serious consequences." My mother cried throughout the sentencing. My father sat stoically, his face gray. When the guards led Kayla away, she looked at me one final time. The tears were gone, replaced by pure hatred. I met her gaze calmly, then looked away. She was no longer my problem. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to ask me questions. Maxwell deflected them professionally while I walked to my car. The story had attracted media attention because of the dollar amount and the family drama angle. But I had no interest in making this public entertainment. I'd done what was necessary, nothing more. In the months that followed, my life moved forward in unexpected ways. The Ruth Hartley Foundation grew, supporting 5 women entrepreneurs in its first year. I personally mentored 2 of them, sharing the business wisdom Grandma Ruth had taught me. My consulting business also expanded, apparently. The way I'd handled the fraud situation impressed several potential clients who valued that level of strategic thinking and thoroughness. Aaron and Stephanie sent me photos of the condo, now fully furnished and clearly loved. They'd honored Grandma Ruth's memory by keeping some of her design choices while making the space their own. They invited me to visit anytime, which I appreciated but politely declined. That chapter of my life was closed. My relationship with my parents remained strained. My mother refused to speak to me, blaming me for Kayla's imprisonment. My father occasionally called, asking how I was doing but never quite apologizing for years of favoritism. I made peace with the distance. Some relationships couldn't be repaired, and that was okay. Maxwell remained a good friend and trusted advisor. "You know," he said one day over lunch, "your case has become something of a teaching example in legal circles. The thoroughness of your documentation, the strategic patience you showed, it's impressive." "I learned from the best," I replied, thinking of Grandma Ruth's meticulous records and careful planning. A year after the sentencing, I received a letter from Kayla. It had been forwarded through Maxwell, who'd reviewed it first to ensure it contained no threats or manipulation. The letter was surprisingly honest. Kayla admitted she'd been jealous of Grandma Ruth's trust in me. She wrote about growing up as the favorite child and never learning to handle disappointment or work for what she wanted. She acknowledged that the fraud had been planned and intentional, not a confused mistake. "I convinced myself I deserved that money," she wrote. "I'd visited Grandma, brought her flowers, posted about her on social media. I thought that was enough. I didn't understand that she valued your time managing her finances, helping her plan her estate, being there for the hard conversations that weren't Instagram-worthy." She didn't explicitly apologize, but she did write, "You did what you had to do. I understand that now. I hope someday we can talk again, but I wouldn't blame you if that day never comes." I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Maybe someday I'd respond, but not yet. The wound was still too fresh, and Kayla still had a long road ahead before she could truly make amends. For now, I was focused on moving forward, building the life and legacy Grandma Ruth had made possible. 18 months after sentencing, Kayla became eligible for parole. My mother called to inform me, her voice cold and formal. "The parole hearing is next month. The family is writing letters of support." "I won't be writing a letter," I said quietly. "I didn't expect you would," she replied bitterly. "You've made your position clear." After she hung up, I thought about that conversation. My mother saw my refusal to support Kayla's parole as vindictiveness, but it wasn't about punishment. It was about honesty. Kayla had committed a serious crime. She'd served less than half her sentence. Writing a letter supporting early release would dishonor the legal process and minimize what she'd done. I also wouldn't write a letter opposing her parole. That felt equally wrong. This was between Kayla, her rehabilitation, and the parole board. My role in this story was done. Maxwell understood my position completely. "You've maintained appropriate boundaries throughout this entire situation," he said. "That's commendable." The parole hearing happened without my involvement. According to my father's brief call afterward, Kayla was granted parole with strict conditions: regular check-ins, continued ethics courses, community service, and prohibition from any financial services work. She would be released in 2 weeks. I didn't contact Kayla when she was released, and she didn't contact me. Through my father, I heard she was living with our parents, working at a retail job, and slowly rebuilding her life. My mother remained distant, still angry that I'd destroyed Kayla's future. But my father occasionally called with updates, his tone neutral but informative. "She's different now," he said during one call. "Quieter, more thoughtful. She actually listens when people talk instead of just waiting for her turn to speak." "That's good," I replied, meaning it. I didn't wish Kayla harm. I just couldn't have her in my life after what she'd done. "Your mother still hopes you two will reconcile someday," he said carefully. "Maybe someday," I allowed, "but not today, not yet." The truth was, I'd moved on. The condo sale money had been invested wisely. The Ruth Hartley Foundation was thriving. My business was successful. I'd even started dating someone, a fellow entrepreneur I'd met through the foundation. My life was full and purposeful, built on the foundation Grandma Ruth had provided and the strength I'd developed handling the fraud. I didn't need family reconciliation to feel complete. Maybe that made me cold, or maybe it made me realistic about the limits of family loyalty when faced with betrayal. 2 years after the initial fraud attempt, I attended a business conference where I was invited to speak about strategic planning and risk management. During the Q&A session, someone asked how I stayed so calm when dealing with unexpected crises. I thought about that question carefully before answering. "I learned from my grandmother that preparation is more powerful than panic," I said. "When you document properly, maintain good records, and understand your legal rights, you're never caught completely off guard. You might be surprised, but you're not defenseless." After the presentation, a young woman approached me. "My sister is pressuring me to add her name to my business," she said quietly. "She says it's about family trust, but something feels wrong." "Trust your instincts," I advised. "Family is important, but so are boundaries and legal protection. Don't confuse love with unlimited access to your assets." I gave her Maxwell's contact information and urged her to consult with an attorney before making any decisions. As I drove home that evening, I thought about how far I'd come from that shocking voicemail in the coffee shop. Kayla's crucial mistake hadn't just been the forged signature or the obvious fraud. Her mistake had been underestimating me, assuming I'd be too emotional or too conflict-averse to fight back systematically. She'd forgotten that Grandma Ruth had trained me well, and that lesson had changed everything.